Boxing is the most popular spectator combat sport in the modern world, and its champions earn more than most other professional sportsmen. The defining fight of this big money era was the 2015 Mayweather vs Pacquiao event that earned Mayweather an estimated $120 million and Pacquiao around $80 million. But to understand the history of boxing, we must go back not hundreds, but thousands of years in human history to a much more primal and bloodthirstier time. Ancient boxing and art. Humans have fought in hand-to-hand combat to the death since living in caves, but the earliest recorded evidence of fist-fighting competitions, according to Encyclopedia Britannica, was found on ancient Sumerian reliefs discovered in modern-day Iraq, which were created in the 3rd millennium BC in the Mesopotamian nations of Assyria and Babylonia, and in Hittite art from Asia Minor. In 1350 BC, a relief sculpture made in Thebes, modern Egypt, depicts two boxers among spectators, and both this and the Middle Eastern depictions show bare-fisted fighters, or ancient boxers, sometimes wearing a band supporting the wrist. The earliest evidence of fist fighting with gloves was found on Men in Crete and dates to between 1500 to 1400 BC. The first formalized boxing rules appeared at the 23rd Olympiad of 688 BC. Boxing in ancient Greece and Rome. In ancient Greece, where no weight categories existed and boxers fought until one of the opponents either acknowledged defeat by submitting or was beaten so badly that he couldn't continue or died, leather thongs were wound around the hands and wrists. The boxers generally fought with a left leg stance, while holding the left arm semi-extended over it as a guard and for jabbing. The right arm was generally held back, cocked and ready to deliver that elusive knockout blow to the opponent's head. Boxing later found a firm foothold in Rome, where hard leather hand thongs were embedded with sharp metal studs to make the cestus's. This brought boxing out of the lowly realms of blood sports and turned it into a death match of the amphitheaters. Highly trained slaves were sometimes pitted against one another in circles marked on the sand, the origin of the term boxing ring. In 393 AD, at the height of the Roman gladiatorial period, boxing regularly resulted in competitors' jaws hanging off and other such brutalities, so the sport was abolished in different areas across Europe. The history of boxing turns to prize fighting. However, after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, the wearing of fist-mounted weapons became very popular again, especially in Italy between the 12th and 17th centuries. The sport resurfaced in London in the early 16th century, where bare-knuckle boxing became known as prize fighting. The first documented bare-knuckle fight in England was recorded in the London Protestant Mercury on January 6, 1681, when Christopher Monk, 2nd Duke of Albemarle, refereed a fight between his butler and his butcher, with the latter winning. And while the metal spikes of the Greek hand bindings had been removed, in the 17th century in England, the sport was much more primal than today's sport. For example, there were no written rules or weight divisions, no round time limits or referees. What is more, an article on boxing published in Nottingham in 1713 by Sir Thomas Parkins described the skills of headbutting, punching, eye gouging, chokes, and hard throws. The first recorded English prize-fighting champion was James Figg in 1719, and the first official boxing rules, called the Broughton's Rules, were devised by prizefighter Jack Broughton in 1743 in an attempt to lower the number of fatalities coming out of the ring. A count of 30 seconds was given to downed fighters to give them an opportunity to recover, and grasping below the waist was prohibited. Boxing rules set in Robert Rodriguez's 2009 expansive work on boxing titled The Regulation of Boxing, we learn that the London prize ring rules eventually outlawed butting, gouging, scratching, kicking, hitting a man while down, holding the ropes, and using resin, stones or hard objects in the hands, and biting. In 1867, the Marquess of Queensberry rules were prepared by John Chambers and published under the patronage of the Marquess of Queensberry for amateur championships held at Lillie Bridge in London. These 12 new rules distinguished bouts for lightweights, middleweights, and heavyweights, and specified that fights should be a fair stand-up boxing match, and all fights must be conducted in a 24-foot square ring with 3-minute rounds and a 1-minute rest interval in between each.